The Sahara is a popular place in Africa because it's one of the biggest deserts in the world. However, after many years, the shocking truth about the Sahara Desert has started coming out, shattering what many people believed about the arid terrain. Some of the people letting out these shocking secrets are guests on the popular Joe Rogan podcast. In this video, we go along with Joe Rogan and his guests as they reveal that the Sahara is not what we thought. The Sahara is the world's largest non-polar desert. It occupies land belonging to multiple countries, including Algeria, Chad, Egypt, Libya, Mali, Mauritania, Morocco, Niger, Western Sahara, Sudan, and Tunisia, covering approximately 3.5 million square miles, or 9,064,958 square kilometers. The desert is bounded to the east by the Red Sea, to the north by the Mediterranean Sea, and to the west by the Atlantic Ocean and the Atlas Mountains. The Niger River and the Sahel, a transitional belt that traverses the continent at the line where the desert landscape transforms into a semi-arid savanna, form the southern border. While the vast majority of the Sahara is made up of large sand expanses, there are some mountain ranges and grasslands, even though sparse. The vast Sahara's topography is surprisingly diverse. Sand dunes cover approximately 25% of the desert, even though they are often in the popular images of the desert. They can be small and large, reaching heights of over 500 feet or 152 meters. They are found in ergs, which are sand seas where the sand is constantly shifting with the wind. The ergs are also transformed by periodic rains. The desert landscape is dominated by rock-strewn gravel plains known as regs, as well as salt flats, dry valleys, and rocky highland plateaus known as hamadas. It gets hot in the Sahara, making the desert unwelcoming and harsh. The highest temperature ever recorded was 136 degrees Fahrenheit or 57.7 degrees Celsius in Libya in 1922. However, temperatures regularly exceed 122 degrees Fahrenheit or 50 degrees Celsius during the summer months. There is a significant difference in temperature between day and night because the air contains very little humidity to keep the heat in. The temperature regularly drops below freezing at night. In terms of rainfall, roughly half of the Sahara receives less than 0.79 inches or 2 centimeters per year, while the other half receives approximately 3.9 inches or 9.9 centimeters per year. One of the fascinating features of the Sahara is a structure known as the Eye of the Sahara. This feature has become controversial as researchers debate its origin. Joe Rogan picked interest in the feature as he confessed on his show, and he invited a guest, Jimmy Corsetti, who shook the internet with the claim that the Eye of the Sahara is the famed lost city of Atlantis.
Because I've been fascinated by the concept of Atlantis.
The Blue Eye of the Sahara, also known as the Rishat structure or the Guelba Rishat, is a geological formation in the Sahara Desert that looks like a massive bullseye. The formation spans a 40-kilometer wide desert region in the African country of Mauritania. For centuries, only a few nomadic tribes in the area were aware of the formation. It was photographed for the first time by the Gemini astronauts in the 1960s, who used it as a landmark to track the progress of their landing sequences. Later, the Landsat satellite captured additional images and provided data on the formation's size, height, and extent. While Corsetti brings evidence that the Eye of the Sahara was the site of the lost Atlantis, scientists disagree. However, the scientists also disagree among themselves about the origin of the mysterious feature. Some geologists believe the Eye of the Sahara is a geologic dome. The formation contains rocks that are at least 100 million years old, with some dating back to before life on Earth existed. These rocks include igneous or volcanic deposits and sedimentary layers formed by wind pushing dust and water deposits such as sand and mud. Geologists claim to have found several types of igneous rock in the area of the eye, including kimberlite, carbonatite, black basalt similar to those found on Hawaii's Big Island, and rhyolites. They say volcanic activity from deep beneath the Earth's surface lifted the entire landscape around the eye millions of years ago. These areas were not deserts as we know them today. They were most likely much more temperate with plenty of flowing water. According to their theory, during the temperate period, layered sandstone rocks were deposited by blowing winds and on the bottoms of lakes and rivers. The overlying layers of sandstone and other rocks were eventually pushed up by the subsurface volcanic flow. Wind and water erosion began to eat away at the domed layers of rock after the volcanism subsided. The area began to settle and collapse in on itself, resulting in the roughly circular eye feature. The ancient rocks within the eye of the Sahara have allegedly revealed information about its origins to researchers. The eye's formation began when the supercontinent Pangaea began to separate. The Atlantic Ocean began to flow into the region as Pangaea broke up. While Pangaea was slowly separating, magma from deep within the Earth's mantle began to push up, forming a circle-shaped rocky dome surrounded by layers of sandstone. As the igneous rocks and sandstones eroded and the dome collapsed, circular ridges were left behind, giving the Richat structure its sunken circular shape. The eye is now slightly sunken below the level of the surrounding landscapes. Meanwhile, other scientists believe the Richat structure was formed by the explosive impact of a meteor that struck the Earth. However, there is hardly any evidence to support this theory. However, Corsetti believes the Eye of the Sahara was the site of the famous city of Atlantis, and he has evidence. One of the questions that have tormented scientists the most is the location of Atlantis. The city is thought to have sunk into the sea as a result of an earthquake or tsunami. Ancient philosopher Plato wrote that Atlantis was a large island near the Rock of Gibraltar with a Poseidon statue, concentric walls, and canals. Plato went on to say that the city beneath the sea should have been located somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean. However, no such town on the ocean floor has been discovered using current technology. While some theories suggested that Atlantis was located in the Mediterranean off the coast of Spain, and others suggested that it could even be under Antarctica. For a long time, the Azores were thought to be the location of Atlantis. However, new research has revealed a new location, and scientists are confident that Atlantis can be found in Cadiz, somewhere between the waters of Spain and Morocco. Now, what did Atlantis look like in its full glory? Plato wrote about the enigmatic underwater kingdom that it was an island larger than Libya and Asia combined. It was possible for travelers of that time to cross from it to the other islands, and from the islands the whole of the continent over against them, which encompasses that veritable ocean. Tertullian, an early Christian author who believed Atlantis once existed in the Atlantic Ocean, agreed with Plato on the size of the island, saying it would be larger than Libya and Asia combined. However, since many others propose locating Atlantis in the Mediterranean Sea, narrations have emerged scaling the city's size to Crete, Greece's largest island. However, in many stories written after Plato's time, Atlantis was described as a massive city with no mention of its size. But the American Christian mystic Edgar Cayce proposed that Atlantis and Eurasia were the same sizes. Poseidon, the god of seas, storms, and earthquakes, built the city of Atlantis after falling in love with a mortal woman named Cleito. To protect her, he built this city on top of a hill on an isolated island in the sea and named it Atlantis. Poseidon walked through the world looking for the largest island until he arrived at the largest of them all, Atlantis, and discovered it was inhabited by people who were more beautiful and intelligent than the rest of the world. He met and fell in love with a woman named Cleito there. Poseidon's new home in the city of Atlantis for his love was surrounded by rings of water and land. 5 tunnels connected the 5 rings of water to the ground, and a vast canal connected the outer rings of water to the ocean. Ships could pass through the tunnels, and every route to the city was guarded by gates and towers. Furthermore, the wall that surrounded the rings was made of red, white, and black rock and was embellished with precious metals. Meanwhile, another hill known as the Hill of Cleito is said to be where Poseidon enchanted his wife because he questioned her loyalty. This hill was surrounded by massive moats and pillars. Cleito had 5 pairs of twin sons, with Poseidon the eldest of whom was named Atlas. The great city was passed down to the 10 sons, and the first child, Atlas, became the first ruler of Atlantis. However, it's believed that they also constructed a massive temple for their father, complete with a massive statue of Poseidon riding a chariot drawn by winged horses. The statue was made entirely of gold and was placed in a temple with a spiral roof so high that clouds drifted through the temple's spirals. Atlantis, the fertile and beautiful city where half gods and half humans lived, is thought to have been an autonomous region where people grew their food and raised animals. Farmers in the city used to grow crops in the fertile plains on the outskirts using an irrigation system that was well maintained. They also created beautiful buildings and other architecture out of black and red stone. They also had access to rare metals and even alloys like brass, made extensive use of crystals for leisure and experimentation, and had plenty of free time to play with volcanoes. Little is known about the city, however, among historians and other researchers, Edgar Case's findings had a different story to tell. Edgar Case believed in the rebirth of the lost city as the sun rises from the sea. He predicted that a new landmass would appear off North America's east coast. He also claimed that the souls of many Atlanteans were reincarnating in America to usher in a new era of enlightened human consciousness. Some people claim the original inhabitants of the lost city of Atlantis were extraterrestrials who arrived there around 50,000 years ago from the Lyrian star system. Despite being much taller and fairer than the average human being, today their average lifespan is thought to have been 800 years, making them robust prototypes of the existent human race at the time. Although some claim that the lost city of Atlantis was on Mars or was simply a colony of an alien civilization, the inhabitants of Atlantis City are thought to have extraordinary powers, such as the ability to control the weather and modify volcanic eruptions. According to some accounts, they also possessed a device that allowed them to channel energy from time and space. So how did Atlantis come to its end? Atlantis became a world leader in academia, architecture, agriculture, technology, diversity, and spiritual empowerment. Their navy and military were unparalleled, and their kings ruled with absolute authority. It's no surprise that Atlantis fell in the same way that Rome did. The Atlanteans were defeated by the only army willing to defend the continent, the Athenians, soon after waging an aggressive, unprovoked war on parts of Asia. The gods unleashed violent tsunamis, earthquakes, tornadoes, hurricanes, and floods on the empire of Atlantis in the midst of the battles. As if confessing its sins, Atlantis shattered and dissolved into the ocean and desert, never to be seen again. What a way to go out. Here is Corsetti describing Atlantis.
Atlantis was said to be a kingdom made up of, or an empire, made up of 10 kingdoms. And then there was the lost city of Atlantis, which was the capital.
So what evidence supports Corsetti's theory? It turns out there is a long list, as there are so many similarities between the Atlantis described by Plato and the Rishat structure. Pay close attention. Plato's relative Solon was an Athenian statesman and poet who traveled to Egypt and first-hand learned about Atlantis. These are the stories that Solon told Plato. Plato describes Atlantis as 3 alternating zones of water and 2 of land in his Timaeus and Critias dialogues, which could easily be transposed onto the physical structure of the eye that we know today. The nearby mountains were revered as gods' representatives, with lush rivers and waterfalls. These mountains were said to be in the north, which is where the eye's mountains are, and the river and water lines that appear throughout the landscape can be seen in satellite images of the eye. Plato described the sea to the south of Atlantis and the desert that surrounded it, which can also be seen in satellite images. It was said that fresh water flowed from Atlantis' center island, which also exists in the eye's center circle. Satellite imagery shows that weather pushed mud across the region, which could easily be attributed to a tsunami, one of many aspects of the weather system that destroyed Atlantis at the same time. Mauritania exports copper and gold, both of which were abundant throughout the Atlantean Empire. Plato claimed that elephants and other animals were plentiful on Atlantis. Many elephant bones have been discovered near the eye. Black, red, and lighter-colored rocks were said to be embedded throughout Atlantis. This is also true of the eye. Thousands of artifacts have been discovered in and around the Rishat structure. Most are 12,000 years old or older, putting them in the same time frame of Atlantis. These items include arrowheads, spears, stone spheres, surfboards, oars, ship hulls, and more. Atlantis was a 10-kingdom empire with the island of Atlantis as its capital. Poseidon, the god of the sea, gave birth to 5 sets of twins, resulting in 10 children, each ruling one of the 10 kingdoms. It is unusual to have twins, but it just so happens that Nigeria, which is very close to Mauritania, has the highest rate of twin births on the planet. Meanwhile, there is a connection that most people do not know about between the Sahara Desert and surfing. While nobody in their right mind would head to the hot desert to surf, surfers around the world have a phenomenon that begins in the Sahara Desert to thank for the waves that make their beloved sport possible. The phenomenon is known as the Sirocco wind. A sirocco is a hot, dusty wind that blows from North Africa across the Mediterranean into southern Europe. While the air in the Sahara Desert is initially very dry, it becomes oppressively humid by the time it crosses the Mediterranean and reaches Europe. The sirocco winds are formed by hot, dry air over the Sahara Desert. As they blow northward over Africa, they pick up dust, which is then carried offshore and over the southern Mediterranean Sea, greatly reducing visibility. In many cases, strong persistent winds will blow dust northward toward the Balkans, blanketing much of southern Italy and parts of Greece in a thick, dusty haze. The winds are so powerful that they can be seen from space. A sirocco can cause clouds, fog and rain over northern Mediterranean areas as it moves northward. The hot weather at a sirocco event can also cause physical side effects such as headaches and insomnia. These winds can have an impact on everything from beach activities to passenger ships to local population centers. It is one of several powerful global winds, including France's Mistral and Canada's Chinook. The Sirocco wind is ideal for water sports, particularly during the months of June and July. It is one of the most popular winds for windsurfers, particularly on the eastern coasts and on the beaches of Murcia. You can also surf in August and on some days off in September, but getting the right power is more difficult, so you'll have to rely on luck. Among the many shocking things discovered in the Sahara is an amazing relic that existed even before the Earth was born. The meteorite known as Ergchek 002 or EC 002 was formed within the crust of an ancient protoplanet, a small celestial body that acts as a building block for planets. Volcanic space rock is the oldest known lava to have fallen to Earth and provides an unprecedented view of planetary formation in the early solar system. Scientists led by Jean-Alex Barrett, a geochemistry professor at the University of Western Brittany in France, jumped at the chance to examine this extraordinary time capsule from the solar system's infancy, which belongs to the andesitic family of volcanic rocks and is unlike anything else ever seen. When they saw the first descriptions of this rock, it was clear that this rock was unusual. Barrett and his colleagues were aware of the EC002's potential age based on previous research on another rare andesitic meteorite described in a previous study. They were extremely interested in the genesis of such extraterrestrial andesitic melts and in the processes of formation of primordial crusts, because such samples are extremely valuable. EC002 is named after its landing site in Algeria's Ergchek Dune Sea and is made up of several meteorites weighing approximately 70 pounds. These stunning crystals were discovered in the stones in May 2020, but earthly erosion of the extraterrestrial rocks suggests that they fell in the desert much earlier. Barrett and his colleagues were able to pinpoint when this piece of protoplanet crust, which was partially melted as lava, crystallized into a solid form after obtaining meteorite samples. An analysis of magnesium and aluminium isotopes in the rock revealed that it dates back about 4.566 billion years, making it the oldest known piece of an igneous crust ever discovered. In comparison, the next oldest igneous meteorite, NWA 11119, is about 1.24 million years younger than EC002, and Earth itself emerged several million years after these rocks formed. Aside from its unparalleled age, EC002 is also notable for its unusual composition. The meteorite is 58% silicon dioxide, indicating that its ancient parent body had a crust made of andesite rock as opposed to basalt, a more familiar igneous material found in volcanically active regions of the Earth. These andesitic crusts were probably abundant in asteroids and protoplanets during the early days of the solar system, but they have become extremely scarce in the billions of years since that time. During our solar system's turbulent and crash-prone period, ancient protoplanets were either incorporated into larger bodies like Earth or blasted apart by collisions with other rocks. EC002 is clearly distinguishable from all asteroid groups, and no object with spectral characteristics similar to EC002 has been identified to date. And the remnants of primordial crusts are not only rare in the meteorite record, but they are also rare today in the asteroid belt. What this implies is that the earliest differentiated protoplanets that populated the solar system, as well as the majority of their debris, were almost certainly destroyed or later accreted to the growing rocky planets, making the discovery of meteorites originating from primordial crusts an exceptional occurrence. The team believes that ECO02 was ejected from its parent body by one of these encounters only a few decades after the protoplanet's crust cooled and crystallized, revealing incredible new details about planets evolving embryos before Earth existed. Barrett stated that he and his colleagues, as well as other teams, are working on other isotopic studies to confirm the age of ECO02. The crystals inside the rock, which are older than the surrounding volcanic material, are also being studied by researchers. However, perhaps more shocking is the fact that the Sahara Desert was once a lush green forest and could once again host a rainforest. What happened that transformed the area into the hot, arid desert that it is today? The Sahara's green shift happened because Earth's tilt changed. The tilt began shifting around 8,000 years ago, from about 24.1 degrees to the current 23.5 degrees, according to Space.com, a live science sister site. That tilt variation made a significant difference. The northern hemisphere is currently closest to the sun during the winter months. Although it may appear counterintuitive, the northern hemisphere is tilted away from the sun during the winter season due to the current tilt. However, during the Green Sahara, the northern hemisphere was closest to the sun in the summer. This resulted in an increase in solar radiation heat in the northern hemisphere during the summer months. The increase in solar radiation exacerbated the African monsoon, a seasonal wind shift over the region caused by temperature differences between land and sea. Because of this increased heat over the Sahara, a low-pressure system formed, bringing moisture from the Atlantic Ocean into the parched desert. Normally, the wind blows from dry land to the Atlantic, spreading dust that fertilizes the Amazon rainforest and builds Caribbean beaches. The increased moisture transformed the formerly sandy Sahara into a grass and shrub-covered steppe. Humans thrived alongside the animals, eventually domesticating buffalo and goats, and even developing an early system of symbolic art in the region. But what caused the Earth's tilt to shift in the first place? Scientists have turned to Earth's solar system neighbors to help them understand this monumental shift. Gravitational interactions with the Moon and the more massive planets perturb the Earth's axial rotation, causing periodic changes in the Earth's orbit. A wobble in the Earth's axis is one such change. Every 23,000 years, this wobble brings the northern hemisphere closer to the sun in the summer, resulting in what scientists call a northern hemisphere summer insolation maximum. Scholars estimate that the northern hemisphere experienced a 7% increase in solar radiation during the Green Sahara compared to now. This increase could have increased African monsoon rainfall by 17 to 50%. Climate scientists are intrigued by the Green Sahara's sudden appearance and disappearance because the Green Sahara lasted only 200 years. The change in solar radiation was gradual, but the landscape abruptly changed. It is an example of abrupt climate change on a human noticeable scale. Records from ocean sediment show that the Green Sahara occurs on a regular basis. The next Northern Hemisphere summer insolation maximum, when the Green Sahara may reappear, is expected to occur around 10,000 years from now, in AD 12,000 or AD 13,000. However, paleoclimate research provides unequivocal evidence that what humans are doing is pretty unprecedented. Even if humans stopped emitting greenhouse gases today, the levels of these gases would have risen by the year 12,000, and climate change will superimpose itself on the Earth's natural climate cycles. However, geologic evidence from ocean sediments indicates that these orbitally paced Green Sahara events occurred as far back as the Miocene epoch, 23 million to 5 million years ago, including periods when atmospheric carbon dioxide levels were comparable to or possibly higher than today's levels. As a result, a future Green Sahara event is still very likely in the far future, and today's rising greenhouse gases may have their own greening effect on the Sahara, though not to the extent of orbital force changes. Meanwhile, there is another way to turn parts of the Sahara into a green landscape: massive solar and wind farms. According to a published study, massive solar and wind farms could increase rainfall in the Sahara and its southern neighbor, the semi-arid Sahel. Let's hear what fascinates you the most about the Sahara Desert in the comments section below.